Alrighty, so I took a quick look. It just seems like separation anxiety is like the priority.
Yeah, separation anxiety is really tough for us
Sure.
with him.
Okay.
He's one of those COVID pups.
Yeah.
And when we leave him at home, he is just like distraught, and it's cries, howls, barks. Like on Sunday we left him for 2.5 hours, and the whole time he was crying, barking, and howling. Can I let him go, or do you want me to hold on to him?
No, it's fine. You can let him go.
Okay. And more recently, like scratching at the door, which, I mean, that's the only destruction he's really ever done. But I think it was more just trying to like escape and get out because he feels so. Him being alone, like he goes to daycare and he loves it and he's fine. He can stay with other people and he's fine, but it's just being alone and not being able to leave at home is very stressful. And then the other thing is the leash walking. He's a puller for sure.
Okay.
But other than that, like those are our concerns.
Okay. Is he crate trained at all or no?
He's not crate trained.
Have you ever been in the crate?
He was as a puppy for a little bit. We got him when he was 4 months old, and we tried to do the crate thing for like a month, I'd say. But it was the kind of thing where it was honestly easiest for all of us. Like he was better not being in the crate and would just be calm instead of crying in the crate. So we did give up on it.
Okay. Because you know that crate this, right?
Yeah.
So, before reaching out, did you do any research on us and know, like, read up on how we train and everything like that?
Yeah, so I know you have is it shock collars?
The e-collar.
Yeah, the e-collar. So I did read about that, yeah, and I have heard, just I know I've seen some dogs around the neighborhood who are good leash walking dogs and have come to you.
Okay. Yeah, just make sure that we're clear on that. And I'll explain how this whole process works.
Yeah.
COVID has, of course, changed a lot of things. And I've been getting a lot of dogs that have separation anxiety because of the work from home, you know. Or like the puppies, you know, a lot of people, they try to potty train or crate train the puppy. It's difficult because of the whining, whatever.
Right.
And they ignore it or like find like kind of alternate solution, like workaround, until like you gotta leave, and then all of a sudden that's a problem. And so separation anxiety, in my opinion, is one of the hardest things to fix because it happens when you're not around. Okay, so I'll give you kind of like the structure of how we go about addressing it, and then it really just comes down to like what you're willing to accept and what you're willing to do. Okay. Because there's answers. It's just for some people, they go like, well, I don't want to do this long term, or I don't want this to be long term. And I go, that's not how it works. Like it's either you accept it or you don't. Okay. So yes, definitely baseline. We need to get some leash walking skills in there. Not because I care about the leash walking, but because I care about what the leash walking helps us implement, which is structure and discipline. Okay, so dogs bite each other; they're physical animals, and this is actually a lot of things. One thing that a lot of owners don't do is, you know, this guy back when he was a 4-month-old puppy and whining in the kennel, I would just correct him, and I would tell him like, you don't whine in the kennels, right? So like, if his mom were to crate him, which obviously she wouldn't, and he were to be whining and she wanted to stop that behavior, she would simply go and bite him. And that would say, stop whining, right? He would use physicality. And people, because they have a puppy, tend to not use physicality because they think, oh, I'm hurting my puppy, or something like that. I'm like, no. I'm like, other dogs, even dogs that don't know him, completely not related, first time they met him, will correct them. You know, and you might see puppies at the dog park where they're, you know, being boisterous and rambunctious, and another dog will snap at them. No problem. Completely foreign to each other, never met each other, first time, dog goes, nope, you don't do that, we correct those behaviors around here, right? And people don't do that with their puppies. And that also leads to future issues, okay? So that's one thing. With the leash walking, so here you see how he keeps wandering around, he keeps whining. That's what I would call overstimulation and anxiety. And they tend to kind of go hand in hand. Anxiety, tends to want to move, as you can see here. He just keeps pacing around, but he's also starting to whine a bit and all that stuff. And overstimulation is the brain's inability to shut down, to just relax. So if I brought my kitten here, she'd come and she'd sit down, and then once she realized, like, are we just going to be here for a bit, she'd just lay down and like fall asleep. Okay, she just chills. Whereas he's not, right? And especially, like, let's say we go this whole consultation, like 30 minutes in, he finally lays down. Like, it took him 30 minutes to like settle, which is like super common with these kinds of cases, okay? And that's part of also the separation anxiety or the inability to be in the kennel, is because his brain is like this, and now you have him contained in a small space.
Got it.
Okay, so then the brain is frustrated, and that's where we get whining, barking. We get dogs that pull kennel bars. We've had dogs break teeth. I've had dogs chew off their tails.
Oh my God.
It can get pretty bad.
Oh,
right?
That breaks my heart.
So that's like an extreme case.
Yeah.
So the leash walking would allow us to essentially slow this down.
Okay.
Get them to just settle. Teach them how to turn off, essentially, just how to just chill, and give them something to focus on. And we do this through quote unquote consequence or physical discipline, and I'll talk more about that a little bit. And it's not the heel, it's not the leash walking, it's the discipline behind it that's actually what's correcting the problems. Okay? So I don't want you to think obedience is the answer.
Right.
It's not the answer. It's the discipline behind it.
Okay.
So like you can go to another trainer and they'll say like, yeah, we'll teach the heel, we'll use treats and all that stuff.
Which is what we've tried to do.
Yeah, and that doesn't work
No.
because it's not settling him down.
Yeah.
If anything, it'll stimulate him because food tends to put dogs in drive and they get very excited.
Yeah.
Now you're just adding more excitement upon excitement, and then that's how you get stuck. Okay? So, the way separation anxiety tends to work is the first thing I do is I start off with the structured heel. It's typically 2 classes.
Okay.
And then you would kind of be my feedback and you tell me what's working, what it helped and what it didn't help.
Okay.
So like I have a case, we just had our second class last night, and their dog has reactivity, which is like lunging and barking at dogs.
Okay.
And in a friendly fashion, the dog's not aggressive.
Right.
And like nipping at them because it gets so distracted or so frustrated on the walk and stuff. And I'm like, I know this is our problem, but we're not gonna worry about that for now. I'm just gonna do the discipline behind the heel. They came back, I saw them last night, I'm like, how'd it go? They're like, it's gone. They're like, the reactivity's gone, the frustration and biting at us when we're walking on leashes gone. I'm like, yeah, because we've calmed him down.
Wow.
So people look at the lunging and barking or the my dog's biting me when I walk them as the problem, but it's not. It's the symptom.
Got
The
it.
symptom was just frustration, lack of discipline, lack of direction. Once we implemented that, problems go away. Okay? So when I deal with cases like this, we have what we call indirect and direct approach. Indirect is what I did with that client. I said, I know this is your problem. Pretty sure this is going to fix it, even though they're not related.
Okay.
Okay? That was indirect. Okay? Let's say they came back and said, hey Jesse, like it's still a problem. And I would ask more questions and make sure that they're doing everything correctly, and if everything was being done correctly, they go, okay, indirect didn't work, but we still need to teach the dog what the e-collar is, because they're not meant to be remoted or e-collar, you know. Then I go, we're gonna do a direct approach, which is correcting the behavior itself.
Okay.
Okay, so there's different approaches, but the first one I was going to is indirect, because that tends to be the one that works 70% of the time.
Great.
Okay? So with separation anxiety, we would do that, and then I would tell you, you gotta bring back that crate. Okay, because giving the dog too much space allows him to practice this behavior. See how he keeps just pacing around.
Yes.
He has this big, nice room to practice and reinforce that anxiety.
Yeah.
And putting him in a confined space, it challenges the brain because it doesn't have anywhere to go. Okay? So like, let's say you put him in the kennel and he was good for like an hour and a half before he started whining and barking. Right? Then they go, okay, like we got an hour and a half out of that, right? But we still need to like do more work because there's obviously he might be in there for a longer period of time.
Yeah.
Then we start talking about other solutions. So I can either do what we call putting pressure behind the kennel, which means if I put him in the kennel and he's either resistant or when I close it, he's immediately trying to get out, clearly the brain does not want to be in there.
Right.
Because he either didn't want to go in, or as soon as I put him in, he wants
And
to
for
get
him,
out.
it was the latter. It was he would bang on the crate, the grate of the crate with his paws.
Correct. So he went in, but then when you turned around, you closed it, he's like, hey, what happened?
Right.
So then we would address that part.
Okay.
So freedom, you know, humans, as being a part of American, you have freedoms, right? You can have any practice in religion, sexuality, all that stuff. Who cares? You're in America, do your thing, right? Dogs don't have freedoms. Dogs have privileges, okay? Because freedoms are what create these problems. So if he thinks it's his God-given right to be free of the kennel, you're gonna get the, you know, pushing at the kennel and all the other stuff like that I listed earlier. So that's where we correct the behavior and we go, nope, that's not a freedom, it's a privilege. So I look at it as growing up as a child, I couldn't just walk out the front door and go to my friend's house. I had to ask for permission first. I had to get the okay first, right? Did I have the ability to go? Yes. But I needed to be given specific permission to do so. Otherwise, I would have had a consequence or freaked out my mom because she's like, where did my son go, right?
Yeah.
So that's how it applies, okay?
Yeah.
Is it sounds bad when you talk, when you're like, you're thinking like a human, but we're talking about
No, you're right.
dog.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
So, when people work with their dogs, I don't care that people treat dogs like they're children, but it's not that they treat dogs like they're children, they treat dogs like they're babies.
Mm-hmm.
And a human baby has no concept of right or wrong, we have no mechanical skills.
Mm-hmm.
So like, growing up, with my aunt, she had an infant, and she had these long earrings, and the infant ripped the earring out of her ear, right? Very painful, she was very upset. But she couldn't do anything about it because it's a baby. If anything, it's like, take off your earrings when you're carrying a baby around, right?
Right, they don't know any better.
Exactly, you can't correct that. Now, once they're old enough to comprehend what they can and can't do, that's a different story.
Right.
So a dog has a learning capacity of a 3 to 4 year old child, meaning the concept of what they can and can't do, okay? And then, of course, the whole background of dogs are physical animals, and they bite each other to give consequence. They don't put each other in timeout. They don't give each other CBD to chill out. They don't give each other treats for good things. They just simply go, don't do that.
Right.
Okay? And that's what people are lacking, is that, they're using these human methods or babying their dog as opposed to going, well, you know what, you're the 3 to 4 year old child and you need a physical consequence.
Yes.
Okay? So, with the crate, I either make the crate a positive by putting negative around it, meaning if I say crate and the e-collar starts to go off, the only way it turns off is if he goes into the crate.
Okay.
So it's like reverse psychology, where I'm tricking him into liking the crate by making everything a negative until he goes in there.
Okay.
Then once he goes in there, the negative goes away.
Okay.
Then if he tries to get out, the negative kicks back in again, he goes back in, the negative goes away.
Yeah.
Right? So he doesn't know where it's coming from, he just knows, hey, when you say this, this happens, and if I go in here, it goes away. Okay? So it tricks him into liking the space.
Yeah.
Or we do that and that doesn't work. Then I go, okay, now we need to correct the anxious or whining or pushy behavior within the kennel. Okay? Now the hard part here is when you leave, right? So like if you're work from home, like all my clients right now with puppies, I've been telling them, if you work from home and your 9 to 5 schedule, whatever your schedule is, you kennel your puppy in a different room.
Right.
Okay? Even though you're home, it's just forcing separation and teaching the puppy, for this kind of routine throughout the days, Monday through Friday, whatever, you're going to be in here. So that should it come to where they're going to go back to work, it's not such a shock to the system because the dog's already been doing 9 to 5 Monday through Friday in the kennel. The only difference now is that the owner is now leaving. Okay, so it makes that a lot easier.
Yep.
So if you're working from home or one of you is working from home, that's something that we start doing. It's just forcing the separation.
Okay.
If, because he's bigger and used to, just being loose and stuff, poses a problem where it's like, well, I can't focus on correcting him and focus on my work where I have calls and I can't have him barking, then what we do is we start off on the weekends when you're going to be home and you're able to commit, and not worry about that stuff.
Yep.
Then once we get that foundation down, then we transfer to Monday to Friday.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Then the last thing would be, if you're leaving and he's still throwing a fit, because now you're no longer there to actually address him, the next thing we use is a bark collar. Okay? Are you familiar with bark collars?
Yeah, I looked into them and I was asking some people, and I know there's like ones that spray and then there's ones that, is it like a
It's the same thing as an e-collar.
Okay.
They call them shock. And
what does it do? What does the shock collar do?
So,
e-collar, I'm gonna use the right word.
Have you ever been to a physical therapist or chiropractor? Have you ever seen those videos where they recreate labor contraction pains in men?
No.
No? Okay, well, they're funny if you like to
Yeah, I like to see that.
So, it's a technology, it's called a TENS unit, TENS.
Okay.
And what it is it's electric, but not like electricity, is they put like these little patches on like a muscle, and it moves the muscle. Okay, so it's kind of like those ab workout things where it's like workout while you watch TV, right? It's the same technology, okay? So it's electric because there's a current, and it's just enough to cause the muscles to contract to either ease back pain. You can find them at Walgreens. If you go in the back pain section, it looks like a little bone, and you put it on your lower back, and it moves your muscles to help ease back pain or relax tense muscles.
Okay.
They use it to break up scar tissue on muscles. They use it a lot in sports rehabilitation therapy. You know, if you like messed up your arm and you couldn't use it for a long time, you can't just get up and start using it again. Like they put this machine to help build the strength again. So it's the same technology. If anything, it's more refined.
Okay.
So for the human version, there's still risk of electrocution, if there's water or something. If you have a pacemaker, they can't use it.
Okay.
And there's risk of electrical burn if they don't set it up or if they don't keep an eye on it. Okay. We don't get that with e-collars.
Okay.
E-collars are fully waterproof, at least the ones that we use, both the transmitter and the receiver. There's no risk of electrical burns. And also I've used them on dogs with heart murmurs, dogs with seizures, you know, dogs with all kinds of medical conditions. They're perfectly fine because it's simply a muscle stimulator. Okay. So people usually think it's like a taser, you know, electrocuting their dog, or sticking the finger in an outlet. That's not the case. It's just a centralized current that moves the muscle. Okay. So the only place he would feel it is on his neck, because that's where it's placed. Okay. So you wouldn't see anything anywhere else.
Okay.
So when you press the button, it causes the muscle to contract. So an e-collar is controlled by you.
Okay.
A bar collar technically is an e-collar, but it's triggered by barking.
Got it.
Okay. The spray one, the citronella spray one, I think is the one you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's the same thing when he barks, it triggers the box, and it shoots out this oily substance called citronella. It's a citrusy smell that dogs don't like.
Okay.
The problem with those is one, it's not physical aversive. You know, dogs smell crap all the time, and you know, it's like whatever. Two, dogs can learn to avoid the spray. So if it's spraying this way, the dog will turn, and the collar, the spray still facing, they'll bark, and then the spray will come out like that. Okay. Whereas with the bark collar stim version, it's the muscle contraction. Okay. Now a bark collar operates a bit differently than an e-collar because it's just trying to suppress a behavior. It doesn't really care about like teaching the dog something. Okay. So when we teach obedience, sit, stay down, come, place, heel, not in his genetic code. That's something that we've created to control our dogs. Okay, he's not meant to do that stuff. So we have to teach him how to do that. So we use lower levels and then we work appropriately. Okay. When it comes to barking, like let's say I get clients who, like I have, you know, my apartment's threatening to like kick me out if I don't get this resolved like within the end of the week. Then I tell them bark collar, max it out, get it done. Because I don't care about how the dog feels. I go, we have a problem, and we just need to stop it. And aversives are meant to stop things. Okay, so like if you speed, you get a ticket. That's an aversive. But for humans, you know, financially, that's an aversive. He doesn't have any kind of that kind of concept, right? Going to prison or jail for long periods of time is an aversive. But people are self-aware, and when you go to jail for 10 years, it's like, holy crap, I lost 10 years of my life in jail. Right? He doesn't have that either. Dogs are all about immediate and physical consequences in order to deter things. Okay. So the approach that I do is I try to implement structure so that we ideally don't need the bar collar, but it's something that may come into effect. Okay. So like I have a case right now, separation anxiety. We just started the kennel exercise last week, but they only did like short periods of time. They did 20 minutes, but they're going to be leaving on Thursday for Thanksgiving. For a long time, so I just told them you really need to press it for this week and a half. And then I'm like, just assume she's gonna have a problem and just put the bar collar in anyways. Okay, the bar collar helps, just keeps the dog settled. So when it comes to that part of it, in some cases we don't need the bar collar. In some cases, the owner needs the bar collar for a few months, and then it goes away. In other cases, the owner just needs the bar collar. It's like it's a forever thing. I don't know how it's going to work out. There's a lot of variables. One is your relationship with your dog. Like here, like we get dogs with separation anxiety all the time, and it's usually a pretty quick fix because we have no attachment to the dog. We don't cuddle the dog. We don't coddle them. We just train them. And it's that coddling and affection part that actually makes the training more difficult because you have a buddy companion relationship while at the same time trying to do an authority relationship.
That's challenging.
Yes, and it's standard with any case that I work with. Whereas like, you know, for humans, like, you know, there's cops, but they're not our friends. Like they're cops. They're here to like reinforce the law. right? So for dogs, they're not needing companionship, they're needing an authoritarian.
Yeah.
They're needing someone to give them consequence for the things that they don't want them to do,
Right.
and structure. And it's trying to juggle those two things that makes things more complicated. So if someone's like really coddling their dog, like they're probably gonna just need to eat the bark collar every time they leave, because what they're doing over here is countering what we're trying to do over here. Okay? Questions about any of that?
No, not yet. I don't think not yet. The only thing is, I know it sounds weird, he has like the biggest neck. Like he has so much neck skin. Does that make a difference with the effectiveness
Sure.
of
So
the collar?
we fit the collar very snug, and I mean I can see he does have a loose neck.
Yeah.
All we do is because we place it all the way up here,
Okay.
because this is more sensitive. Down at the base is less sensitive, so
Okay.
you need more power. So we fit it up here, and then when I get a dog with like, some scruff like that, we just pull it down
Okay.
to help the contact, because there's going to be two probes. And if he's got that loose fur and there's like a fold, it'll fall between the folds, and then there won't be good contact. Okay. And it's, I've worked with Samoyeds, Huskies, German Shepherds, dogs with thick fur, or dogs with loose skin, and it's fine.
Okay.
Okay. Other questions?
Are there psychological impacts on the dog long term? Like,
No.
does it change their personality?
No.
Okay.
He is who he is.
Okay.
Okay. And that's a very common question.
Yeah.
You're not going to screw your dog up psychologically,
Okay.
emotionally, physiologically, anything like that. You might read stuff on the internet that says crap like that.
Right, of course.
It's just people that don't know what they're talking about.
Okay.
I've been doing this for 10 years.
Yeah, no, I trust that. For sure.
10 years, and I've built my career on using this very tool.
Okay.
So every dog that I train older than 6 months is on e-collar.
Okay.
I don't do any other method. The reason is, we have food, and anything that's kind of positive reinforcement based. We have prong collar, and then we have e-collar,
Okay.
to simplify things. Food has the lowest ceiling. The success rate is like in the single digits.
Got it.
Okay? Because you need to have a dog that's very food motivated,
Yeah.
very passive, no kind of drive, meaning like doesn't care about squirrels, doesn't care about other dogs, doesn't care about people,
Yeah.
right? And like a few other things so that food can be successful.
Right.
Okay? Prong collar, much better because it's physical.
Okay.
But if I have a dog, like for instance, I've had a couple where the dogs were on prong collars and the behavior was either so intense or the dog was just so physically tough that it didn't matter how hard the owner corrected, the dog didn't care.
Okay.
Because they're meant to bite each other.
Yeah.
So that you can only go so harsh on the correction before you reach the limit.
Right, and I feel like that's kind of like, if we yank him away from things, and for him, like, he's excited when he sees other dogs, so he does like the lunging and the jumping in a non-aggressive way, and then squirrels also just drive him nuts. But in general, like, he's just pulling, the leash is as tight as it can
Constant
be.
tension.
Exactly,
Yeah.
the whole, hurt your arm, hurt your hand. So we've done pulling, we've tried with treats to like rein him back in, and when he's out there, he's so overstimulated that he's not even fazed by the treat.
Correct, yeah,
Doesn't
because,
care.
he's not meant to be in a home.
Right.
He's not meant to be kenneled, he's not meant to be on a leash, like, he's meant to be free.
Right.
And when you go outside for that, hour walk or 20-minute walk, and you bring your chicken, and he's
Right.
like, yeah, I can get that any other time. But I only see squirrels, for an hour a day, so obviously the value of the squirrels goes way up.
Exactly.
So that's where, again, food falls short. Or if a dog is just too under stress, they don't care about eating because they're just stressed out.
Okay.
So e-collar allows me to get control in any situation, including an emergency.
Yeah.
I've had people's dogs take off because they ran away from fireworks.
Okay.
I've had people's dogs chasing after a squirrel running towards the street and the dog is in drive.
That's happened to us. It's terrifying.
Yes.
Yeah.
And e-collar allows us to kick in and override the
Okay.
dog. Okay. It gives you off-leash reliability from the get-go. I don't need a leash to have a leash on the dog to have control. I have that remote. And it's very simple to teach. It's very simple for the owner to pick up. Transference is very high, which means so I worked with a couple, and it was a husband and wife with a Bernedoodle, and the wife went first, and she was small, and the dog's not that big, but he's low to the ground, very powerful,
Yeah.
and she was just yanking her all over the place, right? And she did the training, and she got it done where the dog was healing right next to her.
Wow.
And then she gave the leash to her husband, expecting haha, good luck. And I'm like, nope. I'm like, you just did all the hard work.
He's trained.
As
Or
soon as,
she's not
yes,
trained.
I was like, yep. I was like, your husband is gonna take the
Okay.
leash, and it's gonna be easy. And sure enough, that's what happened.
And is it, in those situations, is it e-collar forever on walks, or do you find that once you've been corrected, that's something that you phase out?
That's a good question, and it's like the most common question I get.
Okay.
Do you drive?
Yeah.
Do you go on the expressway?
Yeah.
Do you go the speed limit?
No.
Okay. Why not?
Because I want to get there faster.
Why else?
Because I don't think I'm going to get caught.
Not gonna get caught.
Yeah.
It's called opportunistic behavior.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody does it. And then, you know, you see a squad car, what happens?
You hit the brakes and pray.
All of a sudden, you remember that speed limit, right?
Exactly.
And we get pissed like when we get behind someone who is following the speed limit.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
So, yeah, it's called opportunistic behavior. So think of the e-collar as a compliment collar. Okay? When it's present, your dog's gonna behave well and not push the boundaries because he's well
They know
aware.
it's there.
Yes. And then when you remove it, he's going to act accordingly.
Okay.
So it has nothing to do with the training method. It has nothing to do with my skills as a trainer or anything like that. It's simply just the way of the world.
Okay.
So the way I phrase it to people is when you need it, you have it.
Yep.
You're going outside for a walk, you have it. You're gonna have guests come over, maybe he gets too excited and jumps on people,
Yep.
you have it. When you have to leave and crate him and all that stuff, if he's, you know, a barking mess, you put the bark collar on.
Okay.
Other than that, if he's a great dog, you don't need it.
Okay.
And that's something that some people do struggle with
Okay.
because they're just thinking it's a dog, you know, they should just learn and do it because I told them to.
Right.
I'm like, not even humans do that.
Exactly.
And we're self-aware.
And that's like our frustration too. It's like you just want to be like, why don't you understand? Like we're gonna come back every time. Why aren't you just calming down? But obviously it's not. We know it rationally that doesn't translate,
Mhm.
but it's frustrating.
Yes, and that's how most people's brains work.
Right.
So, you know, it's not that you're always using the collar.
Yeah.
If you've done the training and reinforced it,
Mhm.
it's just present.
Okay.
And I've had people move past it.
Okay.
You know, they'll say, hey, Jess, I don't even use the e-collar anymore, right? And I just think, well, what happens if there's an emergency?
Yeah. No, you're right.
You know, like
That's
what
scary.
happens if a car backfires and your dog gets spooked and runs away, or a firework, or all that stuff, right? And that's like the most common one. And actually, I was walking my dogs through Logan Square or the Boulevard here, and it's happened to me twice, where my pit hates fireworks,
Mhm.
and they were going to be off leash. You know, I was just walking them through,
Yeah.
and somebody on 2 walks set off a firework randomly, and this was like in October, August, so not even 4th of July time, right?
Totally unexpected.
So then I'm like, right, because I have to deal with my pit. She's very flighty. She's like, I hate fireworks.
Mhm.
And I was just like, all right, I wish I had my e-collar because then I could just calm you down, but
Right.
I don't because
Mhm.
I wasn't planning on them to be off
Right.
leash.
So there's situations where, and if it could be on them, and you just may not use it.
Correct.
If you
It's
don't
just,
need to.
it's just present, right? So like my dogs, I don't need to use it. They're trained. They're fully off leash trained. They're off leash trained for 8 years.
Right.
But if something like that, like a variable comes up, I want to know I have either the ability to get my dog back if they happen to get off leash,
Mhm.
or you know something like that where I can just calm my dog down. Because it's kind of like in the movies. What movie I watched the other day? I think it was Doom on like Netflix or something.
Mhm.
And the woman's panicking. No, it was Clue.
Okay.
It was Clue, like from 1985. Woman is panicking, and the guy just slaps her to like just bring her back to reality.
Yeah.
Right. It's the same thing for the dog.
It's just like shut like.
Exactly, just like boom, right?
Right.
Just to get okay, what's going on,
Yep.
and then you're able to settle them.
Yep.
Okay, so realistically speaking, you can't account for life, and I've heard tons of stories throughout 10 years of either people actually losing their dogs getting hit by cars.
Horrible.
I had somebody's dog get picked up by a hawk because they were at a golf range, and it was like behind their home was like a golf
Oh
range,
my God.
and the Yorkie ran over a hill. And then typically the Yorkies would run over and come back and stuff, and then when they got over the hill, the Yorkie was gone. And it's a golf course, like it's like just open grass, so it's like where would the
That's
dog
so
go?
scary.
And they're like, must have been a hawk, because that's the only thing in the area
Wow.
that could have, taken the dog.
That's horrible.
So
Yeah, no, we've experienced that with him where he's like, when he was younger, he was better just staying nearby, and then of course one day they get their confidence and he chased the squirrel across the street, and it was terrifying.
right,
And now I'm scarred from just that alone.
sure,
So,
yeah. I mean, and I've had that happen to clients too.
yeah.
And I happened to one client in Lincoln Park. Oh, she was in Gold Coast, but then she moved to Lincoln Park, and that's how she just ended up reaching out to me.
Mhm.
Was like, my dog took off on me, and that's not going to happen again
Exactly.
because it's life-threatening.
Yep.
So that's where e-collar comes into play.
Okay.
It gets a bad rap just because there's a big drama in the dog training world of positive versus negative.
Mhm.
And what I don't understand is how positive can just ignore the realities of life.
Mhm.
Where it's like if the dog is fully off leash, and running towards the street.
Right.
How is waving chicken?
And it doesn't, because we'll come and we'll have treats, and of course that works when we're in a controlled environment. In this room, if I said that, he'd come over and I'd give him a treat, but when you're out there, they're
Yes.
just, and they're in another planet.
Correct. Doesn't work.
Right.
So that's why I do e-collar.
Yeah, that's fine.
Because it has the highest chance of success.
Mhm.
If the owner does everything I tell them, especially when it's something simple like obedience or whatever, we're gonna get super close to 100%.
Okay.
Okay? Prong collar, much better. However, takes more technical skill or just physical strength of being able to correct the dog correctly with enough physical force to deter behavior.
Okay.
But then people don't like that because they're like yanking their dog.
Right.
Whereas with an e-collar, you know, you can give a harsh correction, but it's done at the press of a button.
Right.
And it creates a disconnect, so like the owner's more comfortable with that. And we don't get the confrontation because the dog doesn't know where it's coming from. Okay. So what we may see in the beginning is what people call like mopiness or depression.
Okay.
And it's not. It's nobody likes discipline.
Okay.
Right, so like I was raised old school, I was spanked, and I didn't walk away from the spanking smiling.
Right.
Right, I was like, I was crying or like upset or whatever.
Yep.
So it's not that we're doing that to that extent to him, but when you start to put rules to things,
Yeah.
well now things aren't that fun.
Exactly. He's not used to that.
Exactly.
He gets what he wants.
Yes, so the more you expose him to it, the faster he gets over it.
Okay.
So people tend to, when they see that, lay off the collar, and then they keep this dog in a limbo because they're not being exposed enough to it to just associate like this is just life now.
Right.
You know, and then I just have to accept it. And they're only using it like when the dog's bad.
Right.
So, oh, now the dog's lunging and barking, now I'm gonna use it.
Okay.
And then I'll tell them if you do that, it's gonna be a forever problem.
Got it.
Okay, we always wanna address things before we see the problem.
Okay.
That makes things a lot easier.
Yes.
Okay. Questions?
So do you, I'm sure we'll get there, do you train him first and then you teach us, like you tell us exactly what we need to do? Is it pretty like foolproof as far as like on the owner's side, what we need to do to use the e-collar and like when and all that?
Sure, so now because of COVID, it's all verbal instruction.
Okay.
And I'm there with you,
Okay.
right? So like you can either train at Oz, because I think you're originally scheduled
Yeah.
to meet at Oz, right?
Yeah.
We can train there, and we were doing that in the summer and like early fall, which was great because Oz is busy. Have you ever been there?
Yep.
Yeah, so we got kids, families, parties, rollerbladers, skateboarders, bikers,
Yeah, lots of
dogs,
stimulation.
off-leash dogs, baseball. It's the busiest park in the city.
Right.
Okay? So we would train there.
Okay.
So the owners were like, wow, this is like super effective. We're not in a quiet room, we're at busy Oz,
Right.
and this is actually working.
No, that's great.
But now with fall kicking in, the cold and all that stuff, now Oz isn't very distracting, like there's hardly any people there now.
Right.
But we leave it up to the client because some people still like working outside.
Yeah.
So we either have Oz Park or we have my facility here.
Okay.
So this is 13,000 square feet. My training floor is about 5,000 to 6,000 square feet. So it's plenty of space to do the training and all that stuff. And you know, the concern that people have is like, well, if I can get my dog to do it here, but is it going to work outside? Right now it's the reverse problem.
Yeah.
And I tell them yes, because let's say my e-collar goes 0 to 127 in increments of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 127.
Okay.
Let's say we train, what's his name again?
Hawk.
Hawk. Let's say we train Hawk in the back of my facility, and he does perfect on 25
Okay.
in an empty environment. And then I go, okay, I'm like, the number was 25 here at my facility, so I'm gonna imagine when you go home in his comfort zone, your number's gonna be higher than 25.
Okay.
And once you understand it and once you see it, it's very logical. Okay. All that's going to change is when you go home, since there's more stimuli, you're going to need more power to override.
Right.
So it could be 45 at home. But as long as you're willing to adjust the number and go to 45, what he learned here and the level of control you have here will transfer, no problem. You just need more power. Okay. And that's what inhibits people. Is they feel bad going higher on the collar because they feel like they're hurting their dog.
Right, of course.
Okay? But those that are comfortable and they just go, yep, I did it. So like my other separation anxiety case, on class 2, they were struggling with dog reactivity, lunging and barking, and they were at 30, and I told them, go to 45. And then I saw them last night, and they're like, how'd it go? They're like, oh, no problem.
Okay,
They're like,
that's
going to
great.
45 fix the
This
problem.
gives me hope. This gives me hope. I mean,
Yeah.
it's stressful and you feel desperate, so.
Yeah, no, it's a simple enough problem. It's just a matter of, is the human willing to, you know, go to the extent needed?
Yeah.
I don't know what Hawk here is going to need. Okay. I get some cases where they look like a very soft personality because they're very sweet,
Yeah.
and the owner just doesn't understand that their dog is a physical animal. So like I have a Bernaweiler, that's a Bernese Mountain Dog Rottweiler
Oh
mix.
my God, cool.
And he's a very sweet personality, and he's actually kind of timid. Like he's spooky of people.
That's kind of, he's like usually kind of shy of people, not dogs, but people.
People,
So.
yeah. So she thought his number was going to be low.
Yeah.
Because she's like, he's so sweet and he's shy, right?
Right.
His number was 70.
Wow.
And it wasn't
So-
even like, and I told her, I was like, your dog's number is going to be higher. You know, and then she's like, how? I'm like, because he's a dog. Like,
Right.
they bite each other.
Yep.
You know, plus his size, he's a good, probably solid like 90 to 110 pounds.
Right.
So all that stuff factors in.
Okay.
So I can't speak on what Hawk's sensitivity level is going to be. That's what I help you find.
Okay.
So the first, so going back to your question is, I coach you through everything.
Okay.
I'm there with you.
That's great.
Okay, I'm there with you, and you're teaching everything from ground zero. Okay, so nothing's tied to me. Pre-COVID, I would work with the dog in front of you. You would watch to learn, and then I'd give them to you, then I would coach you.
Okay.
Okay, now it's just completely out the picture,
Okay.
and it's just verbal instruction. Which is also why we're recording stuff now. Because if you forget anything, you just go back to your video.
Right.
And you go, oh, what did Jesse say here? Or it helps couples, because couples can't agree on what
Right.
did Jesse say. And I go watch the video,
Right.
right? So, the other thing is it acts as a resource for others. So like, if you're struggling with something and I've done it before,
Yeah.
I go, watch this video,
Okay.
you know, and then you can watch it, and now you have a visual of like what we're trying to achieve, and it helps you get to your answer faster, okay? For me, it's been great. People are loving it because you learn so much more
Right,
since
that's what
you're
I was
doing it
thinking.
all by yourself.
But I'm glad, so it's a one-on-one instruction?
Correct.
Okay, that's awesome, because my husband and I can be doing it, but we've done group classes, and I think it's hard, so I think that sounds great.
Yeah, group classes, because I don't do group classes. I always have done private one-on-ones, and if I were to do a group class, it would be after they've already done a one-on-one.
Okay.
Because you already know what to do, your dog's already been trained, and then it's like, I want to take my dogs to the next level, and then you add in like all the other stuff, you know,
Right.
like other people and dogs, and we can do more control exercises.
Alright.
But yeah, everything's verbal instruction now. And essentially what dictates the length of time and the cost is simply, one, I know your problem, right? We need to teach them how to walk correctly, and we have separation anxiety, right? And if that's all you cared about, then you have a very short program. If it's like, no, I want that, plus I want more, then you have a longer program, okay? So I have 3, 6, 9, and 12-week programs.
Okay.
You technically could do the 3. It would be 2 classes on the heel and a single class on the separation anxiety, okay? Whether or not it's done within 3 classes is a totally different thing, right? But you would have all the information to tackle it, and it shouldn't be a problem.
Okay.
The 6-week program would be the leash walking, the separation anxiety, and then I would work on recall, which is common cold. Okay, because every dog, in my opinion, should have a good recall, and the style of recall I teach is always off-leash reliable, because it would be pointless to teach it and then not be off-leash reliable. Okay, the 9-week program would be leash walking, recall, separation anxiety, and duration control. Which is if you go to a restaurant patio and you want to bring him along, but you don't want him to move like he's been doing here, and just kind of tugging all over the place. Now you have stationary control. And then the 12-week program is all that stuff, but we build it up to off-leash reliability. Okay. So that's for people that like go hiking with their dog, go to the restaurant patios, go to the dog park, go to the beach. Like they do everything with their dog. Their dog's off-leash a lot. That's where that comes into play. Okay. So for you, I most likely recommend if the separation anxiety is your primary concern, is at least just that 6-week program.
That's what I'm thinking too.
Because
that sounds good.
if things aren't going as smoothly as we'd like them to, we would touch upon it every class after we started targeting it. So by the third class would be, this is how we address separation anxiety. Come back 4th class, how to go, oh, you struggle with this is what you're gonna do. And then for the rest of the class, we work on like recall. Then you come back class 5, how to go, oh, Jesse, even better, but we have this problem. Talk about it a little bit, okay, you have your homework, now the second half of recall. Then 6th class would be like, how to go, Jesse, great, everything's resolved, no barking, he's chill, we can leave him home and go to work. And then I go, great, what would you like to do for your last class? Typically it's an overview, which is where we review all the things that we've learned, make sure that you're practicing them correctly. So heel is the fastest thing dogs learn because you walk your dog multiple times a day. Okay. Recall tends to take the longest because it requires you to go somewhere. Okay, so you have to go to the park, have them on a long leash, and practice your come when called. But you can only practice it so much, because if you practice it too much, the dog won't leave you. Okay, so then that's why that takes even longer. So that, even though the program's 6 weeks, it might take you 2 to 2.5 months or 3 months to get a formal recall completely taught, because of the infrequency of actually practicing it. Okay. Or it might take longer if you're only able to go once a week to practice recall. Like, you're not going to get it done in 3 months. Like, it's going to take even longer. Okay. I had a gentleman who lived right across the street from the river, and there was like this big open grass field with geese every morning, and his dog loved chasing the geese. So he actually had a recall within 2 weeks.
Wow.
Because he could just go across the street, and his dog had great prey drive. So he would call his dog when it was running to the geese, when it was actively chasing geese, when it was like right there just before he had all the perfect opportunities to practice. So within a couple of weeks, he's like, yeah, dog's off leash all the time now, and his recall's spot on. Because he had that tool available to him. Okay. Other questions?
How quickly can we start?
So Maria knows that stuff.
Okay.
I don't talk about my schedule because it changes every day.
No problem.
So she'd get in contact with you with that. How much does this guy weigh?
50 pounds.
50? And he's how old?
Almost 1. Like, he'll be 1 in the next week.
Okay. What I would suggest for you is that you go with the higher powered collar. Just because I'd rather have it and not need it. It's only like $20 more than the collar I would recommend for him. So the one I recommend for him typically is $287 with tax. The one I'm recommending that you actually get is $299 pre-tax. You're probably looking about $315, $320-ish. And the reason why I suggest that is because if we're going to use that to address the anxiety and stuff, there's different components. There's the physical toughness of the dog. There's the emotional state. So like when people get in fights and you get punched, like you don't feel it in the fight because your adrenaline's pumping, and then after the fight it's like, oh wow, like my jaw hurts, right? So for dogs, anxiety is a part of that. Like when a dog gets really anxious, they won't feel the physical contraction of the collar, and having more power allows us to essentially use more discomfort to override the emotional stress. Okay, and then the other thing is dogs just bite each other. Right. So all those things combined can inhibit the collar, so having more power to play with just gives us, like, I come in going, I don't have to worry about anything, because I know we have the highest power there is.
Do you sell that here, or do I buy it somewhere else?
You can get it on Amazon. Yeah, so we would send you the make and model. You go on Amazon, you purchase it. I suggest that you read the manual, and then you fiddle with it. So like you would open it up, turn it on, don't worry about him, just fiddle with it. Your remote should go in increments of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like in terms of dial. It's an LED screen. If it goes 1 to 35 very quickly, you have a bed, okay, or 11. You want to return that, okay? Because I've shown up, or I turn everything on, and I mess with it, and right after, like you can tell, it's just like, ooh, like all over the place. I'm like, uh-oh, we can't use this because it misfires, and it's not consistent. So that we don't, I don't show up or you don't show up, and it's like, oh crap, now we have to like delay a week and all that, okay? In terms of like the time frame and all that stuff, if you do the 6 week, the way it works is, let's say you have a consistent schedule and like Fridays at 3 work for you, is every Friday at 3 for 6 weeks plus 1, so 7 weeks. 3 p.m. on Friday would be your time. No one can take it from you, okay? If you have to reschedule or cancel classes, let's say you reschedule twice, by the time you hit that 7th week, you've used up your priority, but you still have classes, right? So then Maria will contact you and say like, hey, we had to book someone at 3 p.m., you used up your priority, but we have these other times available, and then you would just finish your program at a different time.
That makes sense.
Because we used to block off the time, but then people would cancel, and I'm sitting there with the dead time, and then my schedule will get backed up. Okay? So that's not really an issue. If you have like a rotating schedule, whatever, we do have people that are in hospitals, and their schedule is inconsistent. And in that case, that kind of locked in time doesn't apply to them. Instead, we just book as they learn their calendar. And then, but sometimes I may not see them for a couple of weeks because their schedule and my schedule just aren't lining up. Okay. So there's options there. Other than that, I mean, it's pretty much it. If something were to come up that was concerning, as long as we've covered the first class on heal, I can take tangents. Because sometimes life just happens, and like people are like, oh, my dog has resource guarding, and I really want, like, it's super important that I cover it. Then I go, okay, and then we just shift gears. But then if we spend 3 classes on that, it's just other things exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, but I don't foresee that here. So this seems like a pretty straightforward case.
Overall, he's really an easy dog, but those are two big things to tackle.
Yeah, the heel and the separation.
Right.
Yeah. Trying to think here. Yeah, other than that, going back to earlier, just what people are willing to accept. Some people are just like, I don't want to have to put a bar collar on my dog in order for them to behave. I'm like, I get that. But your dog needs it.
Right.
You
have to be all in with it.
Exactly. So I just like to be upfront with people about that because I think they're under the impression that, he's a dog and they should just learn whatever, be good dogs. Dogs don't have a concept of good or bad. It's just what you allow and what you don't allow. Okay. So like we had a really bad separation anxiety case that I trained for a rescue, and when they dropped him off, I had just put him in a kennel and literally walked 10 feet away to eat dinner, and he sounded like he was dying. Like he was screaming, right, and salivating and just like biting at the bars. So I got that out the way within 24 hours, but it was very, he needed very harsh corrections in order to shut down the anxiety. But then for him, if you put him in the kennel without the bar collar, he would slowly start to escalate, and you would see him just like kind of pushing at the kennel doors, and like you could just see it building. And if you put him in with the bar collar, he would just go in, curl into a donut, and fall asleep. Like he just knew, like, I can't get away with this crap. And when they finally adopted him because he kept being returned, I was like, you need to find someone who's willing to accept this because he's not a case. Because everybody was like, oh, but when can you move past the bar collar? I'm like, he's not. Like he's bad, like he's intense, he's like super intense. But he found the right family, they're completely happy with him. And we found a solution. So as long as you're open to that stuff, I don't
so
see a
for
problem.
one question, for crate, like we love that he like sleeps with us at night. So would that mean you have to be in the crate at night too?
No.
Okay.
I go by his behavior.
Okay.
So like you'll read online, dogs shouldn't be in the bed with you, don't let them on the couch, don't let them out the front door, like without you going first, feed them first or feed them last or whatever. None of that stuff matters. Okay, most of the time. So like let's say we do the crate training, you crate them during the day, while you're working, and when you leave and you're incorporating the bar collar, you do everything I say, and he sleeps with you in bed at night. And everything is fine. Then we're good. Okay. If it becomes like, oh no, like he's still having issues, then I would say like we're gonna refrain from letting him sleep in the bed. We're gonna incorporate the crate overnight and see what happens. And if we find, hey, that fixes the problem. And then fast forward 3 months and you let him out the crate at night again to see like, can you handle it? And you let him sleep in the bed, and all of a sudden we're having problems again. Clearly sleeping in the bed is causing that issue. So then I've had clients tell me, because they get their dogs for emotional support. And I'm like, well, this stuff that you're doing is fueling this problem. So it's either you accept that, and you get what you want, but then you have to deal with this problem, or you don't get what you want and you fix the problem. I don't care what people do at the end of the day, but that's the answer.
I totally understand.
And some people go like, I need this. And I go, all right, I'm not here to judge. I give you the answer, you didn't want it.
And then you have to take what the issues are for what they are. So he goes to daycare twice a week, which he loves doing and we like doing. Is that going to mess this up too?
That shouldn't. No. The only thing that I was going to say is that he's always with somebody. But if you're incorporating the kennel on the other days and stuff like that.
So he's home 3 days, and we're home. My husband and I both are working at home those 3 days. So I think it could be a good time to be practicing that alone time.
Right. So the only thing from it is that he's just always constantly stimulated or with someone. But as long as on those other days you're incorporating this stuff and just forcing separation, shouldn't be a problem. If we notice, we're getting continuous issues, then I might say let's take a break from the daycare a couple of days.
That's fair.
And then see what happens if we just do complete structure for 2 weeks. And then if it's like, hey, you did much better, then you could do that for a month and then try to re-implement daycare again and to see does it affect the structure. It's just there's no concrete answers. And I understand it makes people feel good to send their dog to daycare or whatever. And I'm like, I have no problem with it. The only time I have a problem is when it's going to inhibit something that we're trying to fix.
I understand.
So that's all play it by ear, but I don't foresee it having an issue. Okay. Other questions?
I don't think so.
So Maria will get in contact with you. She'll send you a form. She'll give you a breakdown for the 6-week program, the information for the collar, and all the other stuff. If you would like to know more or learn more about how this all works, you can either go to my YouTube channel, watch lesson 1 of any dog,
Okay.
because nobody knows what they're doing other than me.
Right.
So it's a nice kind of visual, like, oh, this is how it works. Or two, I have on my YouTube channel what's called the client, it's like dog trainer or client highlight reel or videos. And it's where I work with behavioral cases. And instead of being an hour-long video, it's like a 15-minute shortened video of me explaining, how the e-collar like fixed their problem. And then I'll show clips, from like, this was a dog class 1 to class 2. This is how it worked. This is why the dog calmed down. This is the problems it fixed. So it gives you some more kind of direct, like, okay, this is how it's supposed to work. Because people typically think, I come in guns blazing, like just slamming the dog for everything, and like it's not how it works at all.
Right.
Okay?
Okay.
Other than that, it's pretty much it. I don't foresee any issues here. It's just kind of play it by ear.
Okay, that's great. I'm excited.
Okay.
These are, we'll feel good when when he's not pulling us on walks, and when it's such a guilt thing when they're so upset to be left alone. And I know that we've created it, so it's like.
Well, it's not so much that he's upset, it's that he's not capable of being independent.
Right.
Or he's so attached to you. Think of it as kind of like earlier when I mentioned about my mom, if I just left without telling her, she would freak out because she's like, you're a 10-year-old kid, where the hell are you?
Yeah, and they don't.
Yeah, so it's kind of like
understand
that
where
same
we're
thing.
going. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's where the issue comes into play. But nothing out of the ordinary, especially now because of COVID. I've been getting a lot of cases like this.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm excited. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. And if you have any other questions that you may have forgotten to ask, you're always welcome to reach out.
Okay.
And then we'll get back to you. But otherwise, this should be
Maria
pretty
will reach
straightforward.
out.
Correct.
And then we can get booked for first.